Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. Tensions on the Korean Peninsula are back in focus this week. A North Korean soldier crossed the DMZ in the dark of night, prompting fresh scrutiny over the regime's intentions and South Korea's border security. At sea, 6 North Koreans were quietly repatriated, raising the question of whether inter-Korean communication could restart through backdoor diplomacy. Meanwhile, global attention sharpens. The Quad, that's the U.S., India, Australia, and Japan, has put North Korea back on its radar, and Pyongyang is lashing out. All these as the North's ties with Moscow grow even deeper, militarily, culturally, and possibly institutionally. To break all of this down together, we joined in the studio by Dr. Go Myong-hyun, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute for National Security Strategy. Welcome.
It's good to be here.
And also joining us online is Evans Revere, former U.S. Acting Assistant Secretary of State and non-resident Senior Fellow in the Foreign Policy Program at Brookings. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start our discussion with Dr. Go. On July 3rd, South Korean troops have identified a North Korean individual who crossed the military demarcation line overnight. And the crossing took place along a section of the DMZ where border cutting work hasn't been actually completed. Do you think this was a premeditated defection that took advantage of the security gap?
Clearly, there's some planning involved. I mean, we know that the DMZ is extremely tight in terms of control from both sides, from north and the south. So it's very rare to see defections, especially the civilians. We don't know exactly whether what type of background this defector has, but given the fact that the news coverage reports haven't indicated that this person is a military soldier, it's likely that he has a civilian background. So it's the defection to the south through the DMZ is basically a very rare case of a defection from the north because of the tightness of the border. So in addition to that, you mentioned that the North Korea has been putting effort into increasing the level of border control along the DMZ. That's true. That's exactly true. North Korea, following the Kim Jong-un's statements that the two Koreas are now have coastal relations, has imposed a very strict surveillance and then fortification measures along the DMZ. But we have to remember that these actions were focused on not affecting not the entirety of the DMZ, which is more than 100 miles long. In fact, it's concentrated in areas where South Korea and North Korea have previously constructed connections, such as road connections, as well as railway connections, back in the time when the two Koreas had more or less stable relations. While limited, there's some interchange going on. But now the situation is different. So what North Korea have been doing in terms of border fortification has been focused on dismantling this kind of infrastructure. So the area through which this defection has taken place apparently wasn't really affected by these kind of measures. So I think even though the individual has probably planned the defection a long time ago, chances that he took advantage of his own experience of the area and geography more than the opportunity that exists before North Korea further fortifies this part of the border.
Mm-hmm. So staying with the latest incident, this is known to be the first defection to the south under the new Lee Jae-myung administration. So far, North Korea has remained silent on the matter. Mr. Revere, why do you think they've chosen not to have any response?
Well, I think there are a number of things at play here. First of all, it's highly unlikely that North Korea would have anything to say because it would require them to acknowledge that a defection had taken place of someone who may be one of their military personnel. And that's not the sort of thing that you want to have to acknowledge or admit if you're the DPRK. So I don't find it surprising that North Korea hasn't said anything so far. I think a couple of other things are going on here as well, though, and one of them is that the North Koreans have been very quiet with respect to South Korea lately, mostly because they want to see how South Korea is handling things under the new administration, since The Korean government leadership is under new management right now, and that new management in Seoul has indicated that they want to find a pathway back to reconciliation and dialogue with North Korea. I think a lot of North Korea's silence on a number of fronts lately is driven by this desire to wait and see how South Korea handles this incident and other incidents and other things that are going on the Korean Peninsula right now. So North Korea is in wait and see mode. And the third thing, I think, is that North Korea, and this explains, I think, in part the overall silence that we're seeing with respect to North Korea. Official North Korean policy, the government's policy and the party's policy, is not to have anything to do with South Korea. And that's been enshrined in a number of documents in North Korea. And so that explains the silence, that explains the quiet on a number of fronts here. And if North Korea is going to move in a different direction, it's going to take them some time, I think, to try to figure out a way to get back to speaking out mode and re-engaging with South Korea. So for a number of reasons, I think this is quiet time for a number of reasons up in Pyongyang right now.
Mm-hmm. So a wait-and-see approach we're seeing from North Korea. Now, let's shift to a related issue, Dr. Go. Today, the government has repatriated 6 North Koreans who had been rescued while drifting at the sea. Although the North never had formally acknowledged this repatriation plans, its personnel actually showed up advanced in the designated handover site. Do you think this could become a turning point for restoring inter-Korean communication channels?
Well, I think clearly a positive sign in that direction, even though there hasn't been officially explicit communication taking place between the two Koreas, that clearly there are reaction. There's a response to offers made South Korea to the north. For instance, it started with South Korea's unilateral stopping of the loudspeakers along the DMZ, which North Koreans reciprocated very positively. And now it is a second event of the same kind, even though North Korea didn't respond to South Korea's messaging of that South Korea would unilaterally repatriate North Korean fishermen who had drifted to the south by accident. And then North Korea clearly showed up at the time and place that South Korea had told them. So clearly North Koreans are responding to South Korean entreaties. But I think we shouldn't read too much into it yet. So first of all, as Mr. Revere has pointed out very clearly, North Koreans still keep very official doctrine of the two hostile states doctrine, which is very new, and then there's a very good reasoning behind it, because North Korea wants to show to the South that North Korea is now part of the big boys, is a nuclear state, so it's not going to talk to South Korea as equals anymore. That's their point of view, not ours. So there's clearly some mileage that they want to get out of it yet. But at the same time, I think there's a very clear a realistic need for North Korea to communicate with the South. After all, despite what the Kim Jong-un claims, South Korea and North Korea share the same geography, and it's only natural for two Koreas to have incidents like fishermen washing up ashore, also the accidents along the DMZ, and also ensure that there's no accidental clashes along the very fortified and militarized border. So these are all needs that North Koreans also have. So clearly having a complete lack of communication is not useful, not just to the south, but also to the north. So it's likely that given the change of our government in the south, in Seoul, which clearly has stated that it's going to be more positively disposed to Pyongyang, in fact allows North Korea to raise the level of interaction with the South more than before, because it's convenient for them. So just purely based on the practical necessities that the North Koreans have. So I think they're going to interact with South Korea more. But I don't think North Korea is going to dismantle or go back from the present position of maintaining very hostile relationship with the South.
It does really look like the North is giving us some kind of response with a new administration. Now, let's turn to some multilateral diplomacy now. Last week, foreign ministers from the U.S., Japan, India, and Australia, also known as the Quad Security Dialogue, condemned North Korea's nuclear weapons program and reiterated the need for full denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Now, this marks a return to the language about North Korea that has been dropped in the first Quad statement after the launch of the second Trump administration. Mr. Revere, what's behind this renewed emphasis and what significance does this actually carry?
Well, in the aftermath of the recent Israeli and then U.S. attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities and the ongoing rhetoric coming out of Washington and other capitals condemning Iran for its pursuit of nuclear weapons and the production of nuclear-related material in its facilities that were attacked, it would be pretty odd not to say something strong about North Korea at a Quad meeting or any other major international meeting that the United States is attending. So the attack on Iran, I think, has highlighted the shared outrage that many countries have about this illicit pursuit of nuclear capabilities. And so I think the Asia-based countries that make up the Quad, plus the United States, of course, saw this as an opportunity to underscore one of the core principles that they've adhered to for quite some time, which is their strong opposition to North Korea's development of nuclear weapons capabilities. So that attack, I think, made it really essential for the United States and others to remind the international community, and specifically to remind North Korea, that its nuclear weapons program is also unacceptable. I don't think the United States has any intention of attacking it or dealing with it through military means, but it is, I think, an opportunity to highlight in the aftermath of what happened with Iran that North Korea is also a country of concern, and its nuclear weapons program is a program of concern. And so I think this is just a matter of reinforcing something that has often been said in the past. But in this new context, I think it needed to be said again. Having said that, we are probably further away from a denuclearized North Korea than we've ever been. And I don't think people are kidding themselves in Washington or Tokyo or elsewhere that there's any serious near-term path back to denuclearization for North Korea. But I think it was important to make the point that denuclearization remains at least a stated goal, if a goal that's extremely far away and perhaps even unachievable at this point.
So in response to this very strong reminder, as Mr. Revere has mentioned, North Korea has denounced this Quad statement as a grave political provocation, and the North further labeled the condemnation as U.S. interference and also warned of countermeasures. Dr. Go, how would you interpret Pyongyang's such reaction?
Well, I think there's the logic to their argument. I mean, both sides have a logic to this, and the logic hinges upon about the legality of the North Korea's nuclear program. The legality I'm referring to is whether it's legal in the framework of the international law, in the framework of the UN Charter, and the subsequent UN Security Council resolutions which have all condemned North Korea's nuclear program, because in the eyes of the international community, North Korea is a threat, but it's not a threat in just a bilateral sense that's just a threat to South or the United States. It's a threat to the international peace, as clearly outlined in the UN Charter, as well as the resolutions that came out of the Security Council. But North Korea is contesting it. North Korea is saying that North Korea it is developing nuclear weapons for self-defense, which is the right of every state in the world today. So the contest is between the two sides, basically whether this is illegal or not. North Koreans claim it's illegal, it's entitled to its right, whereas the international community in unison, the Quad in this case, have denounced this. Clearly, North Korea is in the wrong, but North Korea is going to contest it. And the way they want to contest it is by highlighting again that nuclear and missile developments are a reflection of their own sovereign right. So it's likely that they're going to respond by carrying out more missile launches, more provocations, but then perhaps they're not going to carry out a nuclear test, but it's likely that they're going to carry out another missile launch.
Well, that would be concerning, but not that surprising, though. Now, let's expand further to the North Korea-Russia axis now. News just in today says Russia's foreign minister will pay a visit to North Korea over this weekend. Mr. Revere, what do you expect during this trip? And are we expecting a deeper military coordination, or could this just mark the next phase of formal alliance?
Well, the DPRK-Russia relationship is growing by leaps and bounds on a number of fronts, on the cultural front, diplomatic front, political, and military, of course. So it's growing very, very quickly. There are some very credible reports that there is going to be a buildup of North Korean forces beyond what are already there in the war against Ukraine. And I think Lavrov's visit to Pyongyang is part of this ongoing coordination and ongoing process of building up this relationship, taking it to the next stage. And I think it's important to point out, though, that North Korea is a participant in a war against a European state. North Korean forces are in Europe, fighting against a European state and fighting against the interests of NATO. And that's why, for example, a lot of people, including myself, thought that President Lee's non-participation in the recent NATO summit was rather odd, because if nothing else, North Korean participation in this war and presence in Europe tells us that Korean security, Korean Peninsula security, and European security are linked in an important way. And so I thought it was important for President Lee to be at that summit, and he was not, unfortunately. But in any event, there has been some recent coordination between Moscow and Pyongyang, and I think we're seeing that play out in these reports about a further buildup of North Korean forces, which is very troubling.
Now, before we conclude our discussion tonight, let's turn to the Trump administration. It's actually reporting to unveil a new national defense strategy in the coming month. It's raising speculation that a U.S. troop alignment in Korea could also be on the table of this new strategy. So if this scenario actually plays out, Dr. Go, how do you think South Korea should actually respond to this?
Well, I think we should be prepared for the contents of the new national defense strategy. We have some inklings on what kind of contents will be contained in the new policy paper. Perhaps because we already know who's going to be the biggest voice in this policy paper. It's likely to be the Undersecretary for Policy Planning, Bridget Colby, and then Bridget Colby, before assuming the position of this present post at the Department of Defense, it's been part of a public debate on what kind of new force posture should the United States have in Asia-Pacific region, and it was very clear that in his mind, South Korea wasn't part of the priority. It was a very important region, obviously, an important ally of the United States, but given that the United States reorienting its defense posture towards containing China, there are other priority areas such as Taiwan, the Philippine Seas, the Philippines itself, and also the South China Sea. So when it comes to the part that could have a very critical impact on the South Korean security would be the state of the status of the U.S. forces Korea, USFK. There's going to be some important changes to USFK. For instance, there could be two different types of changes. One is the integration of the USFK with the U.S. forces in Japan and elsewhere in the Indo-Pacific Command. So that could reflect more of integration of the U.S. forces as part of the bigger defense posture in the Indo-Pacific area, targeting China. There's that. But there's also the possibility of a drawdown of the forces in U.S. forces in South Korea. There are some rumors that potential drawdown of the forces will be around 4,500. So that's going to represent more or less 20% of the present force level in South Korea at the moment, which is around 28,000. So that's a significant reduction. And then the history of the U.S. forces in South Korea shows that once there's a drawdown of the forces, it's never returned to the previous state, meaning that the direction has always been in the decrease. So I think that it's going to be a very important change, not in the good sense though. So that's going to create uncertainty about U.S. commitment to defend South Korea, as well as some people are going to even question the health of the alliance, which could send the wrong message to South Korea's adversaries in the region, mainly North Korea. So in order to forestall this kind of potentially adversarial changes to the South Korea defense posture, I think South Korea should have a very close discussion with the Trump White House as well as the DOD and ensure that our concerns are reflected, and also hear from our American allies what are the expectations, the new expectations on South Korea and the new national defense strategy. And I think we should make changes accordingly. I think we should definitely have more of a prominent role in the Indo-Pacific region, especially when it comes to defending Taiwan. And also, I think Mr. Revere pointed out really well that I think the European theater and the Indo-Pacific theaters are now connected. So I think South Korea should have a more proactive posture in helping out our allies and partners.
Right, absolutely. So with regional fault lines shifting, Seoul's next moves would definitely have to balance deterrence diplomacy and also dollars all at once. We'll have to leave our discussion right here tonight. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights, Dr. Go.
My pleasure.
And Mr. Revere, we appreciate it.
Great to be with you.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.